Hello and welcome to this session of Arirang News Special. It's Thursday afternoon, December 15th here in Capital Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Today, the Yoon administration is hosting an open state policy review meeting, the first of its kind, to address the state of the economy, regional development and major reforms in the education, labor and pension systems. Now, Arirang is carrying live the 100-minute-long meeting, which also includes a Q&A session with 100 civil panelists and members of the Yoon administration. The live event comes in line with government efforts to keep the public well informed about state affairs, ongoing efforts and upcoming endeavors. The event has yet to start, and once it does, we will carry it live, as I mentioned earlier. Now, as we wait for that to begin, we had an emergency macro meeting earlier on this Thursday with Finance Minister Choo Kyung-ho. I understand the meeting's about to start right now. We'll come back to you afterwards.
국민들에게 직접 소개하기 위해서 마련됐습니다.
네, 그래서 오늘 이 시간에는 많은 국민여러분께서 궁금해하시는 점
we are going to cater to the questions that the people would have, and we will share our answers with all of you. Let me first introduce the President, Yoon Suk-yeol.
네. 윤석열 대통령
President Yoon Suk-yeol is here with us. Well, thank you for being here. You have always stressed about the importance of communication, and therefore that is why it is all the more meaningful that we are here today. So how do you feel about this meeting? Well, it's been a while, and we have our civil panelists of 100 people. And it's a live broadcast, so I'm a little bit nervous. So this is a great opportunity to communicate with the people, I believe. And we also have Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and ministers, as well as municipal governments. And most importantly, we have 100 civil panelists, and they were recommended by different ministries. And they were distributed evenly by their genders and their ages. And we hope to have more questions and clear answers to their questions. Please take your seats.
네, 다시 도약하는 대한민국 함께 잘 사는 국민의 나라 변화는 이미 시작했습니다.
Well all together. The change has started already. The journey has begun, and we invite you to the journey. The economic downturn and inflation. The Republic of Korea is in the crisis. Well, real estate, employment is the most important. We need a safe and good country where all people live well together. Republic of Korea anew, the commitments to the people. We will make a Korea where the people are its owners, and we will make a country where we can be respected by the international community. We have 120 key national policies that are the promises with the people. And together with the people, in order to overcome the economic crisis, we have been working very hard. And to leap towards a new future, we are going to do our utmost. Change. The Republic of Korea anew, the change has started. The commitment that was made to the people, we are going to make the promise and keep the promise.
국민과의 약속 그리고 실천.
The State Policy Review meeting, the first of its kind, is the commitment to the people and implementation.
이 자리에 함께 해주신
Well,
여러분
thank you very much.
정말 반갑습니다.
And it's very nice to see you all.
TV를 통해서 또
And the
시청하시는
viewers
국민 여러분
at this meeting at
정말
home.
반갑습니다.
It is
2022년
a
한
delight
해가
to see
이제
all
얼마
of you
남지
and meet all of you. We are nearing towards the end of 2022. This government was inaugurated on May 12th, and for the last 7 months we've been working very hard. Nevertheless, at this point, the promises that we have made to the people, it is important that we take stock on if they were implemented. And I believe that it is the time for us to review if things are going well. During my campaign last year, end of last year, I made a lot of pledges, and those pledges were reviewed by the professionals in our transition team, and those were also confirmed by the cabinet meeting, and they are the norms of the administrative affairs of my administration. And therefore, before we head into the new year, it is important that we review the implementation of these promises. And most of all, for the last 1 year, we've been going through a lot of difficulties and tumultuous economic situation, and amidst all this difficulties, I would like to thank the people for their hard work to surmount these difficulties. And we have seen and we have experienced a lot of disasters and catastrophes. And amidst all this, the people of Korea mustered our strength together to overcome the difficulties. And as the president of this country, I would like to deeply thank all of you. The key tasks are, we have come up with 120 of them, and it's quite a lot. And for the next 100 minutes, of course, it may be a short period of time to cover all the 120, but we will do our utmost to do so. And in the earlier half of 2023, we would like to make another meeting of this kind to cover the ones that we would not be able to cover today. So I would like to ask for your understanding that we might fall short of your expectation, but we are going to do our best. So for the 100 minutes from now on, I would like to thank all of you, the ministers and the civil panelists, for your precious time. Thank you very much. Well, that was, we heard from President Yoon. Now, let me introduce Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who will give a review on state affairs achievements and blueprint. Good afternoon, I am Han Duck-soo, the Prime Minister. I would like to brief you on the state affairs achievements and its blueprint. The Yoon administration is based on free democracy and market, and we are going to make the country that do our responsibility. And based on that, freedom, human rights, solidarity, fairness, and market competition are the basic key for the administrative tasks, and we have 6 national goals and 23 promises and 120 key tasks for the 7 months in order to achieve the goals. We first relocated the presidential office to Yongsan, and we have opened a Cheongwade and gave it back to the public. And in terms of real estate and other policies, we did our best to restore the things that we thought would need more attention. And in terms of society, we increase the income, the median income, to the all-time high, and to prepare for the future, we are also preparing three major reforms of labor, pension, and education. And in terms of diplomacy, we are having this three strong nation diplomacy that will be restored and the ROK-US alliance.
5년 후 대한민국은
Next,
반듯하고 품격 있는 나라,
5 years later, we are going to make this country a decent one where all people can live happily together and where the vulnerable are
국제사회에 영향을 주는
more considered by the other people. And we are going to be leaping towards a decent country. And a country, a decent country would be about a government that has a sound finance and a government that works
국가 청렴도 지수도
better,
22권을 달성하는
and
등
in terms of
투명한
national
사회를 구현하겠습니다.
integrity
환경적으로 지속
index,
가능한
we are going
자율과
to leap
창의가
forward.
넘쳐나는 경제를
We're also going to make the economy more autonomous and more creative, making our economy in the top 10 in the global market, and also $40,000 of GDP per capita.
미래 전략 산업의 초격차를 확보하여
Industries, sophistication of key industries by the sophistication, we are going to achieve our target of 25% advancement. We also will foster 6 key strategic industries and also the aerospace powerhouse. Next would be a country that is warm to the vulnerable. And as mentioned earlier, the median income would be increased by 35% and securing pension, pension reserve, we are also going to pursue the 3 major reform tasks. And also we are going to make a society where the people's lives are the utmost importance. And next is the regional era where the opportunity is equal.
지방 재정 자립도를 50%
We
이상으로
are going
향상시켜
to increase
진정으로
the
지방이 주도하는
local
지방시대를
government's
열겠습니다. 또한 세종시에 대통령 제2집무실과
self-sustainability of finance. This will be increased by 30%. And we are also planning to relocate
50% 이하로
the
완화하겠습니다. 마지막으로 국제사회에 영향을 주는 글로벌 중추국가입니다.
public companies, their head offices to other regional areas.
방산 수출 점유율도 4위까지 끌어올리겠습니다. 또한 자유민주 등 가치 공유국가와의 연대를 공고해야 하고
to 70 trillion won. We're also going to bring up the ratio of defense industry export to the global top 4.
정부는 5년 후 국민과의 약속을 온전히 이행하고
After 5 years of its term, we are going to achieve the promises of the administration and will achieve a country where all of the people live well together.
A bigger and warmer Korea. Now that we had a chance to anticipate Korea to take another leap forward, we have President Yoon Suk-yeol with us today, and he has a status of the national key policies, and you can see this here with us again today. So these are the top 120 policies and commitments, and we will divide it into different sectors and discuss it together. So we will take a look at this through the LED screen. The first theme is a robust economy and solid livelihoods of the people, and this will be diagnosed by and then the second theme would be audacious reform and vibrant regions. So all these 3 elements are very important pivots of the nation. Now, the first theme is that the robust economy and the sound livelihoods of the people.
네, 먼저 첫 번째 주제부터
First of all, let's go over the
살펴보겠습니다.
first subject. It's the high interest, the high price, and the high exchange rate. The so-called Triple H crisis have been becoming serious, and we will think about the breakthrough for overcoming these crises. Let's take a look and listen to what the government is doing to overcome this crisis. We have Deputy Prime Minister Cho Kyung-woo who will give a presentation. Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Prime Minister Cho Kyung-woo, and I will give a presentation on the current situation of the economy of Korea and what the government is planning to do going forward. The economy this year has been going through comprehensive issues, and Korea has been able to reach a 3% growth rate. When compared with other developing countries, it has relatively reached a good growth rate. However, the global economy, including the developed countries, are having economic recessions and slowdown, which is affecting the Korean economy as well. And as a result, we expect that the Korean economy next year will go through even a worse slowdown. So we will look. So we plan on, and we expect that the Korean economy will have a growth rate of 1% next year. So when we take a look at the export of the Korea's economy, the export, we have been making a lot of efforts to increase the export rate. So we have been able to maintain a 3% export rate. However, so we do think that the volume of the export of Korea will be of the 6th in the global community. However, starting from last October, our export rate has also recorded a minus percentage, and because of the rising energy prices, including the oil price, the trade volume and export volume has been decreasing, and it is expected to decrease next year as well. And we expect the semiconductor industry to be hit hard as well. So I do believe that the global economy and the Korean economy will go through some serious hardships. Let's take a look at the rising inflations. So this year, globally, the inflation has become a very serious issue around the globe, including the European Union as well. So European Union has been suffering from a high inflation rate of more than 10%, and the Korean economy is also going through inflation, and the citizens are suffering from it. After recording 6.3% last month, because of the national policies and because of the decreasing oil prices, it has lessened a bit. However, it is still serious. Major institutions in Korea believe that the inflation rate will be stabilized to a 3% rate by the time of next year. Let's look at employment now. After the pandemic, the employment rate has been bullish because of some policies that has been implemented, and it has recorded its highest since 2010, and the employment rate is the highest, and the unemployment rate is the lowest. So according to the quantitative aspect, it is very high. However, according to based on the quality of these employment rates, it is still very low. So we do believe that the number and the figure next year would be very bad because the economic situation this year was not good. So we do believe that because of the economic difficulties this year, it will affect the figures next year. However, we do believe that we do plan on providing more quality jobs to the people. Now let's take a look at the liabilities in the real estate market. Over the past 5 years, the real estate prices have skyrocketed, and the real estate price in Seoul has increased by more than twofold. However, currently, the real estate market has been struggling, and the prices of houses have dropped by 14%, which concerned the people, and which resulted in higher liabilities to the households, making people to struggle. And together with this, the interest rate has also increased, which is putting more burden to the economic lives of the citizens. Now let's take a look at the financial market. The exchange rate used to be about 1,040 Korean won compared to the US dollars, and because of the rising interest rate policies of foreign countries, it has stabilized a little bit to about 1,300 Korean won. However, it is becoming more stabilized due to and thanks to the government's policies. However, there are still many uncertainties. Therefore, we need to keep alert so as to stabilize the exchange rate market as well. So comprehensively, the economic situation is expected to go through some hardships for a considerable amount of time, and next year is not an exception. Therefore, the government, as an effort to overcome these crises, is implementing a series of policies. No matter how difficult the economy is, I think that we will be able to overcome if we cooperate together. We have overcome many and two series of economic crises, including the financial crisis in 2008, as well as the IMF, and therefore, by stabilizing the inflation rate and by implementing many policies to increase export, we do believe that we will be able to overcome the crisis. We need to reform the pension, the labor, and insurance policies, and we also have to prepare for climate change, and also we need to advance our state-of-the-art technology industries as well, and we will make sure that the government will push forward to this. Thank you. So this Vice Prime Minister has made a presentation. So up until now, we have been listening to the achievements and the blueprint of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's economic policies. Then from now on, we will have a Q&A session with the 100 civil panels. The first subject was solid economy and robust livelihoods. The inflation is very high these days, so a lot of people are concerned. So we will have a Q&A session on the livelihoods of the people. I do believe that there will be a lot of questions regarding this subject. So because I don't know all the names of the panels, I will ask questions, and I will call upon the seats and the gender and the clothes that you're wearing. So I ask for your understanding. Does anyone have any questions about the economy? Please raise your hand. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. So I will give the floor to the person wearing the blue shirt. Please hand the mic over to the person wearing a blue shirt. Good afternoon. I am a mother with 2 children. My name is Lee Joo-hyun. So the grocery prices have increased so much, it is even scary for me to actually go to the market. So it is very expensive to purchase just daily necessities like eggs or just milk. And also the price of raising children is also very high. So a lot of people around me tell me that that I need to prepare to pay for my children's college fees. And I think I'm very frustrated as to think how I can come up with that large sum of money. And lastly, I also had a mortgage to purchase a house and to buy the house. However, at that time it was just 5% interest rate, and it has increased to 6%. This has become a serious burden. So this is a very fixed expense that is going up from my budget. So I do believe that. So I want to know if you have any solutions to help just ordinary citizens like us who are going through difficulties due to inflation. So we will take another question regarding the economy and then go to the answer part. If you have any question, please raise your hand. Please give the mic to the person wearing a gray coat.
안녕하십니까. 저는
Hello, good
당진에서
afternoon.
27년
I
넘게 떡집을 하고 있습니다.
owner of a rice cake store in Tangjin for more than 27 years. Before the COVID-19 broke out, I was able to overcome and I've also been able to overcome the COVID-19 crisis because I've come up with many new menus. However, because of the inflation and rising interest rates, it's becoming more difficult for me to keep my store. And I'm very worried and concerned because people tell me that the economic situation will become even worse. The high labor cost and the rising inflation prices is making people too difficult to maintain their stores. So I do hope that the government will be able to help small stores like us to be able to make a living. So I do believe that you just asked a question regarding the rising prices putting a big burden on the people making a living and to keep maintaining their stores. We will have our Vice Prime Minister to answer. So I do believe that I, as a person who is in charge of making policies to make our citizens' lives better, it is very heartbreaking to hear your comments. We do believe and we do understand the difficulties that you are going through. Although the rising prices and inflation was inflicted by the economic crisis abroad, it has affected Korean economy as well, and therefore the Yoon administration is making efforts to stabilize the inflation rate. And as a result, we have been able to stabilize the prices to some extent. So the grocery prices have been stable to some extent. However, we do realize that there are still inflation in various other sectors of the economy, and we promise you that we will focus on stabilizing these increasing prices and make sure that the grocery prices will not be a burden to the people. The interest rate increase has also been a concern, and if the economy is stabilized, it will also bring down the interest rate. However, just at this moment, the high interest rate and people who are vulnerable to the changing exchange rate, we are making efforts so that people who are using volatile exchange rate, we use the fixed exchange rate. So we will make sure that people will be able to these programs, and that we will also provide financial support to people who are raising children so that people will not have burden raising their children. We will make sure that we will exert all our efforts. So I would like I don't know if the rice cake store is holding up well, but I do hope that it is crucial for us to revitalize our economy. I know that this is a very difficult aspect. However, I will make efforts, and I think that it's very important for us to make policies so that people who are running small stores and companies will be able to maintain their livelihoods and jobs. We have special programs to help you out, and we also have various improvements to be made and supplement and subsidies to people who are running small stores or small companies. So I do hope that you will take advantage of this and use this. We will make sure and we will put as much effort as possible to revitalize our economy.
지금 문제가 아니라 전 세계적으로 어렵죠. 지금 고금리 그리고
only
고물가에
restricted
대한
to
질문을
Republic of Korea, but the whole global
답을
economy is going
해주셨습니다.
through very
자, 그리고 우리
big difficulties.
국민들께서 또
So we
관심이
heard
굉장히
from our
많은 게
deputy
부동산
prime
관련
minister.
질문이
The
아닐까
next
싶은데요.
is about real
부동산
estate.
관련해서
Real
질문을
estate
한번
is
받아보도록
one of the
하겠습니다. 한번 손
topics that
들어주실까요?
most of us are very much interested in.
네. 이쪽에
Any
계신 분들이 많이 손을 드시는데요.
questions?
맨 앞줄에 계신 분
The person
한번
in
질문
the
받아보도록
front
하겠습니다.
row,
마이크 넘겨주시죠.
please give him the microphone.
예, 안녕하세요. 저는
Hello.
주택구입에 관심 있는
I
30대
am
청년입니다.
in my 30s and I'm very interested in purchasing a real estate, a home. But since it requires a lump sum of money, we have to take a loan, and taking out a loan means a high interest rate is very much of a burden. And I know there are a lot of different policies to support people like us, and I curious when I would be eligible to the support measures. And in terms of 전세 system, there are a lot of concerns about the fraud and the interest rate that is related to this 전세 fraud. So are there any measures to counter these risks? Any other question about real estate?
네. 이쪽에 계신 분, 네. 자켓 입고 계신 여성분,
The person who has a jacket on, the lady who has a jacket.
안녕하십니까? 저는 직방의 빅데이터 랩자
I am 하명진 from 직방. I am working in the real estate and home market. And because of high inflation and high interest rate, the housing price itself fell by 5%, and even the transaction has fell significantly. And there are a lot of people who are looking for to rent and lease their homes. It's pretty much a big burden for them to take out mortgage loans. And we also have issues of selling homes, and the market next year looks like it would not look very much different from this year. So I would like to know the government's measures. So the first question was about the consumer of real estate, and the second question was from a person in the real estate market industry.
최근 몇 년 동안
Well, for the recent several years, the housing price skyrocketed enormously, and thus many
제때 이
of
자산을
us
준비해 놓지 못하는 거 아니냐 해서 뭐 영끌 대출이다.
nervous about not being able to have a home, and therefore they took out big mortgage loans to purchase homes. And now the asset price of homes are plummeting, and this price change of homes, of course, it would follow the market situation, but what government could do is do its utmost to make it predictable and to manage its predictability. I believe the real estate issue should not be subject to the political interests. It has to have its own focus and its own target. First of all, the young people who do not have sufficient amount of asset to purchase homes, and the young people who are rearing children and are moving, relocating, and therefore are not ready with the big amount of money to purchase homes. For these people, the government could supply public housings, and that would be one policy. And the second policy would be that in the private housing market, with new constructions, there could be supply of new constructions, and transactions could be made according to the market principles. And the supply and demand and supply would match naturally by the market condition, and the government could support with mortgage loans and tax regulations, management of tax regulations, so that the market does not contract but run properly. So those would be the two major responsibilities of the government. First of all, the public housing, in terms of selling by the government, it could be supplied in an affordable price, and in terms of supplying the
값싸게
leasing
분양하는 것과 또
lease
민간 임대 시장에서 좀
it could be that the government
임대 물량 가격이
could manage the leasing
잘
so that
관리가 돼서
the price is
합리적이고 싼
affordable. And in
가격으로
terms of private
임차를 할 수
leasing
있게
market,
해주는 것이 할 수 있습니다.
the government could manage, take a managerial role so that it could be supplied to the public in a reasonable price range.
공공임대주택을 많이 지어서 공급을 하다 보면은 중앙 정부나 지방 정부가 상당한
The lease
재정
of
부담을
public housing, this means that there would be quite an amount of burden, financial burden to the central government and the local governments, and it could, in return, be contracting the economy as a whole. And therefore, the private and the public housing, we are going to be in close cooperation with the private sector in order to supply this housing to the public in a safe and sound manner. And in terms of housing, it's not something that you can store away, that you can have as much as you want, because you can live in only one housing. So if you aggravate the tax for the people who have more than one housing, then this would be the tax burden would be carried by the tenants as well. So the aggravated taxation to the multiple homeowners, the tax burden itself could be carried forward by the tenants. So that would be the principle of the market. So some have a misunderstanding that this heavy taxation for the multiple homeowners should be alleviated so that in return the tenants can rent their homes at an affordable price. And before I took office, the supply and demand the regulations, the complex regulations of supply and demand of housing, it was too complex that in return, as a result, it contracted the market. So we are easing, we try to ease a lot of real estate related regulations. However, we are confronted with high interest rates, and thus the real estate price is decreasing. So even to fix a problem that is not logical, trying to do it at once would bear only negative effects, and therefore we need to manage the velocity of our measures. And the regulation of demands, we are trying to manage the speed of this demand. And recently, there were, in the headlines, we saw a lot of tenants that might be in the risk of losing their money because of a death of a landlord who owned many homes. So since I'm from, my background is also a prosecutor, we looked at this issue in a legal framework. And this morning, we have launched a joint task force team to support with the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure and Ministry of Justice, so that these people would not be victimized and have their deposit money back.
1000세대 이상의 그
And more than 1,000 households, in order to manage more than 1,000 households, you need to have a proper system that manages this many households. And if there aren't any proper systems, then it could result in a fraud. So for the last several months, I've been asking for a robust system to manage and support such landlords. Or do we have any ministers who would like to elaborate more on this?
So we will have the Minister of Land and Infrastructure give additional explanation. I'm the Minister of Land and Infrastructure. The President has already given a detailed explanation, so there's not much for me to add particularly, but to add a little bit more. So I am actually saving. Heard that you're saving money to purchase a house, and you were wondering when you will be able to purchase a house. So we are trying to provide about 2.7 million households to as many people and as a variety of people as possible. And for the public housing, we are trying to provide 500,000 households to the public and provide about a mortgage of 40 years so that we will lessen the burden for the younger generations to have a hope not to give up purchasing your houses and to have hope in purchasing your own houses. We have already made a lot of preparations and we will be able to receiving applications starting from next month. Thank you very much for your addition. And we will also hear from Mr. Kim Joo-hyun, the director of the chairman of the FSC. I'm the chairman of the FSC, and the real estate is an issue that a lot of the people are concerned about. For the financial stability, it is very important for us to establish a light landing of the real estate market issue. So we're trying to solve the issue one by one. So regarding the speculation area of the real estate market, we have announced some policies and measures to overcome this problem, and we have also in most cases, when you already have a house, you cannot get additional loans. However, we will try to make policies to allow these homeowners to get mortgages as well. So to add one more thing, I know that a lot of people are having a difficult time because of the high interest rate. I'm very sorry for that, and my heart aches for them as well. So we have this housing policy for the low-income households and provide loans to them. So we're trying to expand the scope of people actually getting this loan, and this means that this policy provides loans on a fixed interest rate. A lot of the people are using a loan based on an interest rate that changes, so which means that if the interest rate increases, their burden increases as well. So the LH will allow people to change their loan system to one that is a fixed value. So the DSR regulation will be changed to suit the burdens of the people. So we can see that the government is making a lot of efforts to stabilize the real estate economy. So we will look forward to other further measures. Now, next is a topic that is in the interest of all people. So we will take questions from the welfare. So we need to think about what we can do to help the vulnerable, to make them to embrace them into our society and grow together. Let's take a question from the panel. There's something that caught my eye. The person who is wearing a gray jacket on the very back, please give the mic to the lady wearing a gray jacket, please.
안녕하세요.
Good afternoon.
올해 한갑이고요. 90대
I am in my 50s and I have a mother who is in her 90s. My name is Kang-ok. So recently I read an article that the National Health Insurance pension is almost running out, and therefore it is very difficult for the government to provide more benefits to the people, which means that the insurance fees will rise. So for people like me who are becoming old, the increase in hospital fees and insurance payments are very worrisome for us. So recently,
천천히 하세요.
So please take your time. So if the insurance payment, health insurance payments increases and the insurance benefits decreases, I wonder how we will be able to will be able to overcome this problem. Will Ms. President answer this question?
지금 노모를 모시고
I heard that you are living with your old mother, and there are a lot of people with similar situations in Korea as well. So I heard that you are seeing some issues regarding the health insurance policy, and I know that you're worried. However, there's nothing for you to worry, and this is what I can tell you. So the government is trying to revise the health insurance policy, and the reason why we're trying to revise this is because of the moral hazard regarding the health insurance policy. There are some moral hazards of some people who are taking advantage of this health insurance policy, and therefore disadvantaging the honest ones. So our revision is to revise the policy so that it will eliminate these moral hazards. The reason why people are signing up for car insurance is because it's not just because you're trying to make some payments for maybe, for example, get into a car accident with some people. This insurance is to help you out when you make an accident, when you get into an accident that is difficult for you to manage. The health insurance is the same as well. It is for serious diseases that requires a tremendous amount of money. Because these diseases are difficult for people to cover by themselves, we are trying to provide benefits to those who are going through these severe and serious diseases that is difficult to treat and takes a lot of money. So the most important thing about the health insurance system is that it's not for people to go to the hospital at any time whenever they feel a little bit dizzy or a little bit sick. It is not that for purpose. It is for when me or another part of my family is going through or suffering through a very severe disease, is able to get the medical treatment that is necessary so that it wouldn't become too burdensome on financial aspect to the people. So in order to keep up to the original intent of the health insurance, we will make revisions so that people will be able to receive the benefits that they really need to get. So there's some people who are actually doing the so-called medical shopping. This is something that is impossible for those who are going to companies and working hard. And there are people who are using the MRI machines as well. And this is a very serious problem, and I think that reviewing such cases is very important so that people who are a part of the health insurance system is able to receive the health support that they deserve. So this is very crucial.
우리가 왜 기업 그 활동에 있어서도
when we take a look at the businesses, there is the principle of business judgment and the business judgment rule.
일정한 원칙에
So
따라서
according
판단하는 것에
to
대해서는 그 기업 경영자의 그 판단을
so the
존중하고
CEO of a company makes a decision based on these principles, and this is only plausible and the policy in the business operations smoothly when the people abide by the rules. So if when a doctor decides that some sort of treatment is necessary, I do believe that it is important for us to comply with the medical judgment of a doctor. So we need to establish the rule of the medical judgment so that we will be able to run the health insurance policy based on the rules of the doctors. So we will make sure that we will not affect the rules of the doctor's judgment. So we will make sure that the screening system for the insurance users are very strictly done and to make more policy measures so that people who are in need of the insurance will receive the health benefits and make sure that the insurance pension will be used and allocated to the people without any setbacks. So does anyone have any other questions?
관련해서 우리 조기용 보건복지부
So
장관께서
the Minister
답변하실 거 있을까요?
of Health, do you have any questions or answers to make regarding this question? I am the Minister of Health. The President has made a very detailed explanation, so there's nothing for me to add more, but I would like to tell you that what we are trying to reform is that we are trying to provide the critical illness insurance an essential insurance. But we're trying to reform is to prevent people who are receiving health insurance as a fraud.
좋은 답변이 되셨습니까?
Thank you for the question. I hope that it answers your questions.
오늘 오시면서 마음속에 내가 어떤 질문을 하겠다 한
I'm sure that you have all
가지씩
brought some questions while coming here. So please feel free and don't hesitate to ask any questions. Does anyone have any other question?
반대편에 계신
So we will have the person
정장 입으신 분
in a suit on the opposite side. Please hand the mic over.
질문해 주십시오.
Please take your mask and ask a question. Good afternoon. I am in the welfare-related work at the Yongsan-gu. When working in this field, a person who has the minimum income is able to receive about 580,000 Korean won. However, this is not enough because the price inflation will become more serious next year. I would like to ask if there's any plans to increase the minimum wage. And there are a lot of people who are old people who are dying in solitude and living by themselves. So we would like to ask a question if the government has any measures to resolve this issue. Because this is a person who works in the sector, I do believe that this can be a very practical and realistic question. We would like to hear from the President.
지금 질문하신 우리 주민센터 우리 사회복지사님
public service. I know that you're working the public service and you're having a hard time. I would like to respect your hard work.
몇 달 전에
So a few months ago,
위기가구
I went to
발굴을 어떻게 하면 제대로 할 수 있는지
I thought about what we can do to seek households in crisis. So I visited the resident offices and talked with the people working in the sector.
정말 이게 주민센터에 있는 몇 분의
I do believe
사회복지사분들만 가지고는
it is very difficult for people working in the social services is difficult to overcome, to resolve this issue by themselves. So seeking and discovering households in crisis is very difficult and very even more difficult to help them out. So we also had the Minister of Health with us at the time of the meeting, and we need to increase the number of social workers, and we also need to assist them so that they can divide their workload. And we also need to provide more incentives to people who are in charge of each villages. And we did find out that a lot of the people in the religious sector is helping them out as well. So we will make efforts so that the local governments will be able to assist the social workers to resolve this issue. I think that this is the work that cannot be done alone by just the social workers, and we'll make sure they will make a more systemized solution for this. So we also visited households where the aged lives alone. So providing minimum income of about $580,000 is just not enough. I know that this is a very small amount of money. However, it's just not about increasing the amount of money. I think that it is very important for us to improve the conditions of their living conditions. It's just not about the money. So I thought that it is very important for us to follow the steps of the advanced countries. So I thought about coming up with a common household where all the aged can live together. So when we go into small villages in the countryside, we can see a lot of centers where the old people watch television together and eat together and enjoy cultural activities as well. And I do hope that we will be able to come up with some kind of similar solution in the cities as well, although it cannot be the same as what we can see in the rural areas. But we will try to make up with a common household where the aged people will have an opportunity to eat together at these houses and to enjoy culture. So this is what I have thought of visiting these places. And this is not just about the aging people. I think that the younger people and the people in different generations will need to come together, and that this kind of common households should be a combination of different generations. I think that this is a fundamental method to overcome this issue. This is not about the old houses for the old. This is an age-friendly convergence of generation housing system that we need to come up with. This is to provide people people of different generations to receive the benefits of the health care and the food aid as well. I think that this is more efficient for social workers to work as well. And the different concerned departments should also make efforts in developing this kind of households. So I do ask for you to continue your interest in this matter.
Well, the elderly, where they live, the house where they live, for them to live in a good condition. It's very important for them to live in a good condition, to live a healthy life. So we have to have an integrated service of nursing as well as health care. And so we have a lot of ministries like land and welfare and all the local governments. We will cooperate together to come up with a good measure. And next year we are going to expand our budget in terms of supporting the people who are faced with a sudden accident, and this will be supplied from 1st of January. So it's not only the government's efforts, but because there will be a lot of blind spots, so we need a cooperation from the social workers and the workers in the community.
네, 말씀 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
약자 복지에 대한
So
내용을
we
좀
talked
살펴봤습니다.
about the welfare
자,
for
다음으로
the
넘어가 볼까요?
vulnerable.
최근에 이 스토킹
Next,
범죄들로 특히
we are going to
여성분들의
talk
굉장한 우려가
about
크죠. 그래서 국민 안전을
crimes
위협하는 민생 범죄에 대한 내용을 살펴보도록 하겠습니다.
threatens the livelihoods of the people, because recently we had like stalking crimes of females. So let me ask the person who has white shirt on.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello,
고려대학교 재학
I
중인
am a student at Korea University. My name is Oh Young-so. Well, this year we had the crime of Shindang Station, and we also had cyber crime that the subjects are most of the females, and also the sexual offenders, their management system, electronic management systems, the breach of the system are some of the news that make us, like females like us, more nervous. There are crimes that these critical crimes could happen to any of us in the society. Therefore, we need a stern measure to prevent such crime, and justice and the rule of justice and common sense is very important.
질문을 해주셨습니다. 잠시 후에 답변을 들어보도록 하고요. 한 분 더 질문을 받고 답변을 듣겠습니다. 자, 손 들어주시면 제 옆에 여기 체크 무늬 셔츠 입으신 분.
Pattern shirt.
안녕하세요. 그 마약 대치군 그 운동복 중독 재활 센터에서 근무하는 박영덕입니다.
Park Young-deok. I work in the rehabilitation center for narcotics addiction. I am also an addict, a former addict of narcotics, and this narcotic issue is disseminating in a very rapid manner. The people in the teens, 20s, and 30s, they can easily access to narcotics through SNS, and the sales of narcotics through these SNS is very widespread. So I would like to know a system to manage such deeds. I also would like to know the plans of the government for rehabilitation of the narcotic addicts. So that is why I made a confession that I was an addict myself for this question to be answered. So the first question was about the social crimes as a female living in this society. The second question was about the measures to cut narcotic addicts or narcotic
제가 좀 원론적인 말씀을 드리고
sales.
법무부 장관에게 상세한 설명을
answer in a preliminary answer, and then the Minister of Justice would take over.
불안한 이런 사회라고
A society where being a female or a woman is something to be nervous about. This is a grave issue of the nation itself. The Shindang Station incident was a very grave accident, a crime where a person was victimized. So this is something that all of us in the society were affected by this crime. And this is a social. It
대처할 수 있는
works as a social trauma to the people.
절차법적인 제도들을
And we need
촘촘하게
a very
설계를 하고
close-knit
그리고 이 피해자 지원 센터를
policy,
더 시설과
procedural policy as well as legal policy, and we're also going to establish a center to assist the victims. And as a long-term plan, this is not something that we can take our time, but it has to be in a very made in a very rapid manner, so that the women in our country could live in a more safe environment. And about 10 years ago, our country was considered as a drug-free country. And when I was a prosecutor myself, I've seen the cases where there were groups that were making and distributing the drugs.
조직폭력 1, 2, 3, 4, 마약 1, 2, 3, 4 이렇게 하고 또 많은 경찰
these incidents would be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and the groups were numbered, and the police and the prosecutors, as well as the crime teams, we were formed in one team, and we worked around the clock to battle the drug problem. But at some point, the prosecution kind of walked away from this issue, and now it's the burden is only felt upon the police, and therefore the effectiveness seems like it dropped. And the drug price, the narcotics price itself, is not only about the unit cost, but it is aggregated by the risk price, meaning that the country is the production cost itself bears the cost of fighting against the government's measures, but the phenomenon that we're seeing, that the narcotics are all over the society, means that the government is not doing its work properly in terms of cracking down on the drug issue. So together with the people and the related ministries, we are going to talk about the measures.
Good afternoon, I'm Minister of Justice. So I don't really get nervous whenever I receive questions from the National Assembly, but I am very nervous actually receiving questions from the citizens. I feel very responsible as a public service. And first of all, to answer the questions regarding sexual crimes, I will talk about this first. That the Korean government, we are very well aware of the insecurities that the citizens feel about these crimes. After the crime at the Sindang station, we are making efforts, policies, so that people, and making legislation so that the people who are stalking others or who are making cyber crimes will also will be wearing the electronic anklets. So we are making efforts to make more stringent legislations. I know that this is not enough, but we will make sure that these laws will be strengthened. Recently, there have been some debates about and controversies about people who have committed severe crimes, and the people were very angry and socially that these people, after they serve their time in jail, will be able to live near schools. So we will make efforts so that to implement a law like the Jessica Act in the United States, and we will adopt some legislation of this sort in Korea as well to prevent these sexual offenders from living close to schools. Also mentioned about the narcotics since 2015, the Republic of Korea is no longer a narcotics-free country. The students who have been arrested for using drugs in their teens have exceeded 5 times, and those in their 20s have also increased dramatically. And the use of narcotics has become very serious in Korea, and it's also become very cheap as well. So with just the cost for buying a pizza, people will be able to purchase drugs. It's not the marijuana usage is also very serious as well. This is not the type of marijuana that the hippies used to use. However, this is a very high quality and very strong drugs. So a lot of the people do believe that we should not become a country where the parents will be worried about their children from using drugs when they go into school. We will make sure that this never happens. We will make stringent crackdown on the production and smuggling of drugs, and make efforts to provide as much as possible for people to rehabilitate from drug usage. And we have, as the President has pointed out, we have also been made a team specializing in these narcotics, and the Food and Drug Administration in Korea is only operating 2 rehabilitation centers, but we are planning to increase the number of these rehabilitation centers as well. I will keep all of your questions in mind and make sure that we implement this in our future policies. Thank you for the detailed answers from the President and the Minister of Justice. This is the commitment to the people and implementation meeting. This is the first one of its kind, and this meeting is held to enhance the understanding of the people, and President Yoon is here with us as well. So we do hope that this session will serve to resolve any questions or concerns that the people have. Now we will move on to the next topic. It's the revitalizing the regions.
네, 성장 한계에 봉착한 대한민국.
So the Korea is now at a time where it is limited, its growth is limited. Now it is time for us to pursue balanced development of the region and local places as well. A lot of people are, we would like to learn more about what the government is doing. We will first hear from the Presidential Committee for the Balanced National Development, Mr. Udong-gi. So today, in Korea, more than half of the working population is focused on the capital area. This means that the growth in Korea is very limited as well. For the past 40 years, the government has been carrying out various policies, and the centralization in the capital area is becoming more serious. Now, we need to revitalize the local places and to divide the power structure that has been centralized in the capital area should be divided, and to provide balanced development. And we need to come up with a new era for developing the regional places. The government will open an era of the local places where people will be able to have balanced opportunities. So this is made possible by balanced development, and this is the era of the local places that we are pushing forward. In order to make this possible, we first need to provide more authorities and budget to local authorities. So we will have to make the local municipal governments to have the authority to carry out the policies that it needs to carry out for its provinces. So we need to provide more authorities to local governments so that they will be able to run their own regions. And we also need to transfer the economic policies to give it to the local governments, and to provide more jobs to the younger generation. So we will try to make more efforts so that other to provide more dramatic benefits to those who work in the regional places. So we will also provide transferring the secondary public institutions to the region places. So we will come up with policies and measures as fast as possible so that these transfer is committed and implemented starting from earlier next year. And next, we will also provide a special district for freedom of education. So we will try to provide an innovative policy for education in the regional places, which will help solve the low birth rate issue, as well as people moving from regional places to the capital area. In addition, the key to this is to carry out policies that will revitalize the regional places. The informatization has led to a more serious centralization of the capital area. Also, with innovative technologies such as AI, we will try to create a digital environment and ecosystem in the region. And then we will make our commitment so that it will be implemented without any setbacks. So we will also commit and conduct a lot of discussions with the local government so that we will be able to push this policy forward. In order to support a vitalization of regional development, we will increase our budget to support the regions. We have a special legislation coming up, and we will make sure that this passes the National Assembly, and we will make this possible starting from Sejong City. So we will move our and they relocate the Committee for the National Development to Sejong City as well. We would like to ask for your continuous support to make this possible. So we will also establish major plans to realize and settle the era of the local areas. We need to make a fair and just Republic of Korea where everyone has the same and equal opportunities. We will make sure that this happens. Thank you.
From Chairman Udong-hee of the Presidential Committee for Balanced National Development, we say that regions should survive in order for the country to survive. The Korea Employment Information Service projects that 46% of the 228 cities will disappear in 30 years, and this is why we need to discuss about this survival strategy. And we have asked 3 people, and we invited 3 people who would have the most interest in this regional era. This is the president of Gangwon University. Hello, I am President Kim Won-young of Gangwon University. Today, I am also a member, a chair for the subcommittee in the Balanced National Development. The birth rate is 0.87% at the moment, and the submission rate to the universities is under the total number of university students. And also there is an issue of these people in the local area going back to losing these people to metropolitan area, and the crisis of regional universities. The issue itself is not only the issue of the school, but it's the issue of the society. So what is important is the employment, and employment rate is closely related to the regional universities. And if the regional universities have the R&D capabilities and have more capabilities, and then they would be able to attract more students to the regional universities if they have a good system and have good R&D capabilities. So the first step to the national balanced national development would be the fostering of the regional universities, and I would like to ask the government to seek a very progressive proposal or policy to develop the regional universities. Let's hear from Mr. President. Well, we are going to touch upon the education reform, and I believe that this topic will arise once again. But the president of Gangwon University just mentioned about the balanced national development, and the core of this balanced national development is the education of the regions and the higher education. The support on the higher education is very important, is what he mentioned, and I agree with him. When we were in the transition office in Tongidong, we had a meeting with the 6 major economic leaders, and I asked what could the government do for their companies and for the economy to grow, and the answer in unison was that we need good people. And supply of good people is important, and to do this we have to reform the education system.
그리고 제가 어느
And I once met with the local governor, and the governor said that he or she could provide a big chunk of land so that there could be more investment in the region on that land and build factories. And I conveyed this message to these 6 key leaders, and the answer that I got was that even if the land is for free, we're not going to go there. And I asked why, and the answer was that because the people would not follow. The core technology personnel, they would not follow to the company to the regional areas. And there was also a similar incident where a big factory was constructed in Cheonan. And another factory was built in Paju, and these core workers all relocated to Paju, and therefore they had to come up with a good policy to resolve this issue. So we have a lot of issues like infrastructure, transportation, as well as self-reliance of the municipal governments, and also have the support of the local central government to the strategic sectors of the respective regions. So these are the 3 major principles, and amongst it, at the core, it lies the education issue. Because companies, they need to follow the people, and people follow the environment that they live in, and the living environment at the core is education. And the regions, let's say a big major company moved to the region, and if that region has a good education system that has a competitive edge over the metropolitan area, then I would see no reason why the people of that company would follow and relocate to that region. Because I have been living in many different cities as a prosecutor myself, and Seoul is actually the least comfortable place to live in compared to other cities around the country. However, when it comes to children and the education of the children, it is very important for them to have the education infrastructure of schools and private institutions to have a competitive edge. And that is why it is difficult for these families to relocate together. together to the regions. And for middle schools and high schools, if there are a lot of competitive middle schools and high schools in the region, then this would be automatically carried on to the competitiveness of the regional universities. Like Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan, we had prestigious high schools, and when back in those days, the national universities in these cities, they had a very high rate, high prestigious state, but that was in the past. So it's a question of chicken or egg, but the regional development as well as regional universities, the issue is about the education itself. So the comment that was made by the president of Gangwon University, I believe, it was very down to the core. So in a nutshell, the education, the middle education, we need more choices for the education consumers around the country. And the regional universities, as soon as the Minister Lee of Education took office, he announced that the regional universities would have discretion of enrolling their own students. And universities and industries go together, and the regional industries, their development would induce the development of the regional universities, and we would have more inflow of talented people to the regions. Of course, it is inevitable that we would have leakage of these personnel to overseas markets, but all in all, if the environment is there, the good quality people will flock in.
지금 교육부장 이주호 장관께서 이제
Minister Lee Joo-ho of Education,
교육부 장관 한번 하시고
he was a former education minister actually.
AI 그 에듀텍
and recently he is looking into AI edutech in order to close the gap between the education of the metropolitan area and the regional area. And using this AI technology, applying it properly to the market, there would be a good chance that the families with children in the school-age children would be able to relocate to the regions. We have the Busan, mayor of Busan, and I've heard that there are so many oppositions of big companies relocating to Busan, and Busan is our second biggest city of the country, and still it shows that many parents of the school-age children are reluctant to move to Busan. So this speaks a lot that we would have to pay more attention to the development of regions, and this would attract investment into the regions, and this would be a virtuous cycle that results in the improvement of regional university. So thank you very much for your comment on that. The relocating of the companies, there would be a multitude of support from the central government. So why don't I ask a Minister of Infrastructure
행정안전부 장관 이상민입니다.
I am Lee Sang-min. I am the Minister of Safety and Administration, and ever since I have become a minister, I had a chance to visit the different industries. When I heard from that, the biggest reason why these companies are hesitant about going to local places because they have difficult time receiving talented people. In the case of Hyundai Elevator, they have relocated to Gyeongbuk, and before they made the relocation, all of the R&D center technicians and engineers had quit their job, and therefore they have reviewed and thinking about relocating to Pangyo. So we will try to provide more authority to the local regions so that they will be able to attract more companies to in their area. And as the President pointed out, we will provide and apply a special system to focus investment on fostering talented people in the region and to close the gap between the education system between the local places and the metropolitan areas. And in particular, in order to prevent people and young people to stay in the region and rather than moving to metropolitan areas, I think it's necessary for the company to provide a quality job. However, this is not something that the government can do by themselves. Now we need to provide the industry and companies to move to these local areas, and what we can do as a government is to provide as much incentive as possible. This is not just about the taxation incentives and the financial incentives. It is also about providing all the things that the company needs to settle down in local places, such as the most appropriate land size as well. So we'll make sure they will provide as much effort as possible. Thank you for the answer. We only have about 100 minutes, and the time seems to fly by. So when you ask questions, you can say whatever you want, but I would like to ask you to make it briefly. I know that this is very difficult, but I would like to ask you for that. We will have another question. So the President has already, and the ministers have already answered a lot of the answers to the questions that I had. If the Busan was also another country another city that has received a lot of attention from the people, we do believe that the country would have been run by two cities, Seoul and Busan. I think that it's very important to provide as much authority to Busan City as possible. Everyone up to date have thought that this is a very difficult issue. However, it was very difficult for the government to actually come up with the practical measures. So this was something I felt while I was doing administration. And we, at this point, there is no authority for the mayor or the vice mayor to appoint any person in our senior sectors of the municipal government, local governments. Therefore, it is very crucial for us to actually receive practical authority. I think that what is really needed for the local governments to make developments, specialize its own region, is to gain more authority. So I would like to ask the government to provide these local governments to the authority that is necessary to grow these human resources. And I ask for your support. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. So the President is here with us, and maybe the President can give an answer right away because he came all the way to Seoul from Busan.
우리 시도지사님들하고 이렇게 분기별로
I have a meeting with the governors and the mayors of cities, and the Minister of Safety is also participates in these meetings as well. But there's this problem.
여기 용산 대통령실에 미국의 이 주지사들이 여러분이 오십니다.
So at the presidential office, we do have a lot of governors visiting from the United States.
우리 한국 기업 투자 유치를
are trying to attract investment in their cities in the abroad and ask me to provide support to them.
미국의 시도지사들은 미국의 그 주지사들은
the governors in the United States were very active in attracting investment, traveling all over the world. So what I came to think is that, well, how come our country, our mayors are not able to travel to other countries and places to attract investment? I think the issue lies in the fact that they lack the authorities, because in the United States, the federal government, which gives more authority to these provinces and states, is different from Korea. So I think that there is a very big difference in the allocation of authority in Korea and in the United States. For each state, it has its own laws, so the governor has its own discretion to realize and legislate laws that is necessary. However, in Korea, we always have to legislate a law that is applied to the nation as a whole. For example, when we establish and legislate a law, construction law, it applied to the whole country. In the United States, however, when the construction law is enacted, it is different based on the states. Taxation goes the same as well. So I do believe that if we are to give more authority to the regions and local authorities, we will make sure that we will try to send as much power as possible. However, more fundamentally, we need to solve this issue. The National Assembly makes singularized legislation, so there are many administrative laws and legislations that and we will try to, and this means that the mayors lack the authority to make any amendments to these legislations. I'm not saying that we're not going to do it, but I'm telling you that the National Assembly will need to think about this more closely, so that the local governments will have more autonomy in exercising their power and to allow local governments to compete with each other. I think that this is a structure that is needed to revitalize the local areas. Thank you for the answer, Mr. President. We have some additional answers.
대통령님께서 지금 강력한 의지를 말씀을 해주셨는데요.
The President expresses a strong commitment, and the Yoon administration's policy goals is to make a development based on region places, to open an era of the region where people will be able to live no matter where you live. As the President pointed out, he conducts meetings with region and local governments, and also he has attempted to provide a fund to assist the local areas. We're also preparing for policies to assist the development regional places. As the mayor of Busan pointed out, the local governments really need the autonomy and the discretion as well as the authority, and it is true that this is necessary. Last month, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has also pointed this issue out, and he has mentioned about allocating the authorities that the central government has to the local governments. So a lot of the departments in the Prime Minister is struggling and talking and engaging a lot of discussions with other departments to allocate more authority to the local governments. So as President pointed out, we will try to provide more authority to the local governments by providing them the authority to design their own assets and to provide more authority for the governments, local governments, to develop their ports and airports. So we're discussing with our other departments to make this possible. So we will make sure that we will make an announcement by early next year. So one part that we have finished discussion is easing of the regulation, and I will give you this as an example.
그 문화재 지역을 이제 지정을 하면
So when we designate a place as a cultural heritage place, it limits the development. Currently, according to the law, 500 meters from the cultural heritages are limited from development. So we have completed discussions in decreasing this number to 200 kilometers. So when we apply this to the local areas, it's about 500,000 square meters that are released from these limitations in development. The government, as well as the president, has strong commitment to ease and allocate as much authority as possible to the local government so that they will have the autonomy to develop by themselves and open an era of the region. Thank you. So we have some fervent, enthusiastic discussions going on. So, but what is unfortunate is that because this is conducted in real time, we need to speed up the process. So I would like to ask for your understanding to make quick questions and brief questions and answers.
Next, we will hear from Chairman Ijeha of Daegu Commerce Center of Commerce. Well, Daegu metropolitan area, even if we're a metropolitan area, we are seeing a drop of young people, and we are losing young people to the bigger cities. And this is because we don't have a good employment or jobs. And as Mr. President mentioned, the infrastructure is about transportation, and this is a key component for us to attract the young people in the region. And these young people, in order for them to take business trips to overseas, they have to move to Incheon International Airport from Daegu. So that is why we need Daegu International Airport as soon as possible. And Daegu, we have many people who are commuting to the vicinity areas, and just like Seoul. So not only Daegu but also other regions. For us to maintain the people, the workers in the region, we need infrastructure such as transportation. And this is essential for these people to feel that they are not discriminated just by living in the regions. And this would bring more opportunities and will be able to maintain good talent in the region. So are there anything more to elaborate, Mr. President?
선거 때 이제 공약하고 국정과제로
만들어놓은 my campaign pledges and the policy tasks, it includes the infrastructure of the regions.
같이 진행하기가 여러 가지 재정 여건 때문에
because of financial conditions, there could be some discrepancies in terms of the timing.
지역의 경제 활성화를 위해서
So for the revitalization of the economy in the regions,
좀 먼저 지정을 해서
the municipal governments should prioritize what is of utmost importance so that we can first support these priority issues such as infrastructure projects that would be the most important, significant for the development of the regions. So do we have any comments from the minister? I am the policy committee chair, and just like Mr. President just mentioned, he has always been stressing on the point of closing the gap between the regions and the metropolitan area, and that would be the medical, cultural, and education gap. So for this to be resolved, there are a lot of motions in the National Assembly. And until 100 days of inauguration of President Yoon, we had about 92 tasks and bills that was proposed, and amongst them consist the agricultural rural areas as well as the city development and urban convergence. And other than these, we are looking at the medical projects, just like the state-owned medical facilities. So those are some of the ideas the President has, and from our People Power Party, we are supporting to the fullest to make this bill to be passed by the National Assembly. In particular, the education problem issue, especially there were some needs to reform the regional areas education fund and to support the regional universities. A bipartisan consultation would be made, and when the motions are passed by the National Assembly, we believe that these motions that are pending at the moment would be passed, and our party will do our utmost to support.
국민과의 약속 그리고 실천 제1차 국정과제 점검회의 계속되고 있습니다. 이제 어느새 마지막 주제입니다.
The first key policy task review meeting, and we are now going to touch upon the three audacious reforms. So let us hear from Cho Dong-cheol, the president of KDI, for why this is so important. Hello, I'm Cho Dong-cheol. Well, several months ago, I became a grandfather. I have a newborn grandchild, and therefore I think about how can we make this country a better place. First would be that we should not leave behind a debt that is unbearable. So we live in this environment due to our parents' endeavors, and our generation was fortunate due to the efforts of our parents, and we should not leave behind a country full of debt to our children. So this would be not taking our responsibility to the fullest. And for our children to live in a better place, we have to give them the ability to adapt to changes. And for them to advance their own capabilities, there should be a lot of different kind of supports so that this would not be depending on their own household situations. And for them to develop their potential, they should be given a good education system. And there are a lot of needs from the younger generation to have more innovative ideas, and to do this, we have to support them with a variety of different courses in the university. And the workers, for the workers, the labor market itself has to also change so that we don't see any more of these people who have already entered the companies and they are just stagnant there, and there are no more chances for new recruits. And also, there should be a hope for the younger generations so that they can try over and over again, even though they fail in their first or second trial. So giving the young generation a hope and lessening the debt burden and to give them the opportunity for them to realize their potential to the fullest. And therefore, the pension, labor market, and the education reform is a package all in one as itself. So we heard from Mr. Jo Dong-cheol, the president of KDI. I believe that was a very meaningful remark. The willingness of the government and the reform willingness would be very important. So what is your take on this? Well, I agree with Mr. Jo because we should not evade from this, but to carry out these three major reforms, and this is essential for the sustainability of the nation itself. And it is, all in all, for the future generations. And the pension reform is to rejuvenate the intention of these young people to work and to provide the labor reform is to provide the employment opportunity for these people. And for education reform, it is to equip our children with an international competitiveness. So these three reforms is not a selective, but a mandatory thing that we have to carry out, and we must be able to achieve these three reforms. Well, thank you for the comments. So these three major reforms, labor, pension, and education. Let us first take questions about labor reform.
네, 제 옆자리 구역에서
So we will take a question from the section in my right. Please give the mic to the person at the very end. Please introduce yourself and ask a question briefly.
안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. I'm Mi-jung and I'm my 40s.
최근 한물연대 파업을 국내 입장에서 들어보는데
I heard about the demonstration and the strike that is going on between the truckers, but a lot of the people engaged in the small industry like us are not able to receive the materials. So I do think that is very gives a big problem to small and companies and stores. So I was very concerned about this, and when I heard about the government's actions, the government, it just felt like that they were just trying to muddle through the situation. However, I was very good to see that the government and the truckers were able to come up with a conclusion. So I am looking forward to other policies by the government as well. So I came to think that the government this time will be able to provide a more policy and measures that is applied to all the citizens to help people have a better living. So we did have a comment that from the person that it is necessary to come up with a standardized regulation. We will have another question from the Seoul
말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Transportation Corporation. Good afternoon. I am the head of the union member of the Seoul Transportation Corporation. So when I came to work from a company, I came to realize that a union is necessary. However, there are some times when the union strays away from the original intent. So I thought that it's very difficult for us to receive the support of other peoples if we move on like this. That is why we have come up with a new union. The main reason for the strike last time was because of the restructuring of the company, and this is also similar to the incident that happened in the 2010s, because people have thought about so this issue was because the strike was because of people wanting to become a more regularized worker and not a temporary worker. And as a result, the union has actually requested to make a more systemized system of the company, so to make us work more efficient. However, it has not resulted in but this has not resulted in actual improvements of the system. And I do believe that the union should also be focused on improving the status of the employers and not just demanding something that is not reasonable. I think that this is very important for us to actually get the support of the people. So I do hope that the government should listen to the voices of small unions like us and not just the big unions, because it's very important for our unions like us to provide more support to and our request for the vulnerables in the company. So I do hope for your more interest in small unions like us. So before we listen to the President's comments, I will tell you to mention one more thing before I move on. Because we are running out of time, the other parts of the session will be carried out by KTV. So, two questions have been asked. So, about the legislation, standardized legislation, and the rule of law, as well as listening to the voices of the labor union. Thank you for the precious comments. Reforming the labor system is carried out and should be carried out on four major paths. First of all, according to the demand of the labor flexibility is necessary. Secondly, in the labor market, we need a justice. And for example, in terms of labor and company relations, negotiations are being carried out. And during this process, we do think that justice is needed and equality is needed. And also we need to take care of people who are not non-permanent workers and temporary workers. And these people are being discriminated compared to other big labor unions in large conglomerates. So we need to prevent this from happening so that these kind of discrimination is not being implemented. So we do need to make the system more just and equal. In addition, another point that we need to focus is stability of labor in their job. And the fourth matter is that the safety of the labor and stability of the labor and company relations. If the labor union continues to make strikes day after day, it is unfavorable for both the labor union and the company. And in order to make the situation more stable for the company and the labor union, it is very important for us to establish the rule of law. This is very important. So once you made a promise, you need to keep it. And when there is a problem, you need to discuss it and negotiate and come up with various measures to address the issue and maybe receive the help of the mediation committee. any act that violates the act should not be a means to achieve one's goal. It may be seem like a resolution in the short time. However, it is disadvantages both the company and the labor. So I think that safety, fairness, and stability and flexibility, these four sectors are very important in changing and reforming the labor system of Korea. Last time, the truckers were on a strike. This gave a lot of citizens and the companies difficulties.
이런 것도 국민들께서 지켜보시고
I think that this should also be observed by the citizens as well. And if this kind of culture continues to go on, I think that a lot of people came to realize that this is not acceptable anymore.
노사 간의 관계에 있어서의
And the labor and company relations, the fairness is very important, and the respect towards the labor workers and the treatment to these workers is very important. We need to improve this as well. Moreover, the relations between workers is very also important. We need to make sure that people are receiving the same compensation for the same labor that they are providing. So I think that this is a culture that needs to be established, and that our policy should head towards accepting and adopting these changes.
이런 노동
Also, this kind of labor reform, if we are not able to achieve this kind of reform, this will provide serious problem to the Korean system, because it is very important to keep note that the labor situation is not turning into a political dispute. So this will be disadvantageous to everyone. So I think that the citizens should come together, and the labor union should come together and cooperate as well, and that the political parties should become bipartisan and should cooperate together to resolve this issue. If we do not solve this problem, our economy is not able to overcome this crisis, especially in the situation that the labor system of Korea was established in the 1960s and 70s when we were based on the factories. So the Labor Act in the 60s and 70s, and therefore we need to make some adjustments, because we are not at an age where we are adopting more technologies in our labor, and therefore if we do not make reforms to the labor, we will not become competitive, and we will not be able to produce expensive products in the global market, and will lag behind other advanced countries. And for this is something that we must overcome and solve for our future generations. The details will be provided by the Minister of Labor. So, Mr. Lee Jung-si I am Mr. Lee Jung-si, Minister of Employment and Labor. Because the President has made such a detailed explanation, I don't think I need to make more, add more. But the President has mentioned that we are not able to adapt to the labor market under a rapidly changing situation, and this will become an inflict by dual labor system, and I think that he mentioned about the flexibility, the fairness, stability, and the safety of the labor market, and that this is very important. So the labor system in Korea was actually established in the 70s, which was the beginning of the industrialization, and this is not appropriate for the current situation, and this is actually hindering the development of the Korean society, and therefore we need to make some adjustments, reforms, as the President has mentioned. In order, when we consider and look at the international competitiveness regarding the labor, we can see that
our status lags behind. So for the labor market in the current system is hindering the development for the youth to engage in work in the local areas, and there are a lot of blind spots that are not receiving the benefits of the laws, and a lot of workers who are suffering from these blind spots, and therefore the government should, as a priority, as the citizen mentioned in their question, should reform the labor market and establish a fair labor and company culture based on the rule of law regarding the labor union. Like the truckers' strike that has disadvantaged the citizens and the companies. If the union labor tries to achieve what they want by force, we have to make sure that they will not get what they want, and this should not be accepted by the society, and therefore the government will be responding strictly to any illegal acts of labor union, and therefore the number of days has decreased from 20 days, 220 days, 220,000 days, which is a conspicuous decrease from the previous. And therefore, the government from now on will guarantee the equality of the labor and company relations and improve the system and policies for the stable development of the labor union. In particular, I would like to talk about the minimum wage and the maximum working hours. So we will innovate the laws and systems in line with the changes of the eras. So we will establish a labor market that is in line with the era. So the wage for the people will be provided equally based on their performance, and eradicate that there is no free labor in the youth. Also, the labor hours is the largest in the global community, and currently, however, the Korea are strictly regulating the amount of hours of working hours. However, this is not to be seen in the global community, and therefore we'll be providing companies to choose the working hours freely. But at the same time, we will make sure that the laborers and workers will be able to receive amount of time for rest, so that it will not harm their health. So maybe if a person who works overtime, he or she can accrue and the number of overtime and use this as a vacation. In addition, we will also try to improve the dual structure of the labor market. So we will try to come up with a measure where the main company and the contractors can coexist, and so that the people in the contracting sectors will be able to receive the benefits of the laws. And as the President pointed out, we'll make sure that we will provide equal opportunities for the labor and the workers. So we will try to close the gap between different workers and to provide more coexistence between the labor and the company through negotiations and discussions.
Well,
that was Minister Lee Jung-sik of Ministry of Employment and Labor. So we could feel that the government is very much willing to reform the labor sector. So I would like to hear from people who are from the corporations. I have a female who
네, 안녕하세요.
had
저는
showed her
경기도
hand.
일산에서
Hello, I am
식자재
from
마트를 운영하고 있는 대표
Ilsan, and
구경주입니다.
I run a
방금
big
장관님
market
말씀을 들으니까 계속
store.
궁금했던 부분들이 많이 해소가 돼서
Listening to
굉장히
the minister,
흐뭇합니다.
I
근데
could
가장 시급한
feel that
부분이
many
하나가 있습니다. 30일
of my
미만
questions were answered.
기업에서 주
Well,
52시간에서
one
8시간 추가
question is
연장 근무를
that
하는 일몰이 이제 곧 이번
there
달에 폐지가
is
됩니다. 이 일몰에 대한 연장이
law that will be
너무나 시급한데요,
abolished this
대통령님.
month
저는 이 확답을 이 자리에서
about the
꼭
working hours of the
듣고 가고
companies
싶습니다. 이
with
일몰
under
연장이
30 people of
너무나
employment.
너무나
We
절박한
have to
부분입니다.
have
대통령님, 이 부분에
this
대해서 어떻게
law to
생각하시는지
be
말씀
prolonged
부탁드리겠습니다.
before it is abolished. So I would like to ask for your opinion. Actually, this
초당적 협력이
is
필요한 입법
a
사항이고
part that we need a bipartisan agreement from the
연장해서
opposition party.
앞으로
We would like to
당분간 더
prolong this system
이 주 52시간의 탄력적 운영을 30인 이하
of
사업까지 할수 있도록
sunset
추진을 하고
system,
있습니다만
and we are pursuing to prolong the sunset system so that the 52 working
협조를
hours could be prolonged, but the cooperation from the opposition party is not there yet. I think Minister Lee could elaborate a little bit more. Well, as the President said, the labor market reform would need some time to take effect. So, to a limited period of time, we are trying to prolong this
지금 진행이 안 되고 있는데요.
this act
지금 노사 모두
before it is
상황을
abolished.
호소하고 있습니다.
And we have 3 bills that were proposed.
되고 거기 종사자가 603만 명에 해당합니다.
We have
기업하시는
about
분들은 사업을
630,000 workplaces that is eligible to this sunset policy. And there are different concerns from different parties, and we are trying to persuade the opposition party so that this could be still in enforcement until a certain period of time. So, do you have any specific measures that you could take? We are going to do our utmost so that it could be passed. And even if it's not passed, we are going to come up with supplementary measures. Now let us move on to education reform. Well, education reform is of a hot topic of people.
이제 몇 질문 안 남았으니까요. 네, 허심탄회하게 손 들고 질문해 주시기 바랍니다.
So I would like to ask for a candid question.
회색 정장 입으신 분께
The person in the gray suit.
네, 안녕하십니까. 저는 경인교육대학교에서 교수직을 하고 있는 박주현입니다. 오늘 질문 의견을 하고 싶은 게 3가지가 있었는데요. 교육이 중요한지를 현 정부는 어떻게 생각하는지.
One was what is the take on the importance of education of this government, and second would be about
그 청사진을 듣고 싶었습니다.
change of education system according to the change of time.
지금까지 그 제가 요 토론을 참여하면서 대통령님께서 제일 많이 하신 단어 중에 하나가 교육이라고 볼 수 있어서
since I was sitting in this panel, I could see that the president mentioned education, the word education, the most during the last 100 years, 100 hours, and about the national balanced development, the core was education as well, and even for the economic issues, education is also important here. And about the cyber crimes and crimes, this also all comes down to education problem. And AI and edutech was touched upon, and the education reform and education innovation, I could see that the will of the government is very strong. But nevertheless, it's not really palpable in terms of how this could be realized. So I would like to know the philosophy of the government in terms of education reform.
말씀하셨고 이번에는 좀 학부모 바로 드셨네요. 네.
So we have a question from
마이크 좀 주시죠. 의견을 한번 들어보면 좋겠는데요.
So please give her the mic. Hello, I have a child in elementary school. I once gave a class on poetry to the elementary school children, and this class was very sophisticated, and that was I was caught by surprise, and I could see that this creativity is there, the potential of creativity is there with the children. However, the situation that we encounter today in terms of education is that it is mostly focused on university enrollment and the private institutions. The cost for private education is snowballing. And this public education, people say that it is of utmost importance. However, this reality is different with the private education. So that I hope that the policy would go into the direction where the public education would be normalized.
우리 대통령께서는 어떤 답변을 해주실 수 있을까요?
So I would like to ask the president on his opinion.
정말 어려운 얘기입니다.
Well, that this is a very complicated issue.
선거 때
During my campaign, I met with an expert, education expert,
좀 조언을 구하니까
and asked for that person's advice on education reform, and the answer was that it's better not to mention about education reform if you want to earn more votes. So it is very important, however, very difficult as well. And there are differing opinions in terms of humanities education and science education. So my opinion is that the education service of the nation is one tier is welfare and the other tier is growth. From nursery to middle school, this would be an education where all people could enjoy the benefits. It should not be discriminated according to the regions or to genders. So regardless of any of these components, all people should be able to enjoy the education until middle school. But from the higher to high school, but the higher education from university onwards, this should be focused on reinforcing the national competitiveness. I once went to Andong University and had a conversation with the university students and asked them to and I kind of there was a misunderstanding that I was saying that humanities education is less important, so that was a misunderstanding. Because there wouldn't be any areas that doesn't carry the importance of education, especially the higher education. So higher education is the backbone of the national competitiveness. And therefore, higher education we should take the standpoint of taking this higher education as the backbone of the national competitiveness and the essence of national competitiveness and growth. So, of course, it'll be better if we have more support from the private sector. Nevertheless, the government will support to the fullest, and instead we give the autonomy to the academia. And even in the Constitution, the freedom of education is stipulated, and the competitiveness of academia comes from the autonomy of the universities and their self-reliance of the universities, and this is the spirit of the Constitution. And by doing so, this will lead to the free democratic Republic of Korea and the development of the Republic of Korea. So as the professor just mentioned, the education philosophy of the nation is, I believe, what I have just mentioned. And I would like to turn the microphone over to the Minister of Education, since he's the expert in this area. Hello, I am Deputy Minister and Minister of Education. As Mr. President mentioned, this is a very burdensome but very important issue that lies with us. So until now, we had this ideological issue so that the education was not able to be effective to its fullest. So about the basic scholastic capabilities, it's going down, and this is also an aspect of human rights, and it's decreasing more and more, and each household, they are having more private education expenses as time goes by, and also we in the private sector, they are saying that they are short of the talents, especially in the chips industries and cutting-edge technology industries. So the education reform is the task of the times that we should not turn a blind eye to anymore. The education reform, of course, is a difficult issue, but as it's difficult, we have to go back to the principles. And the essence would be the education of principle and education of common sense, especially for the students, no matter where they're born and to what household they're born into, they should be able to receive the fair education opportunities. First, what would be important would be the tailored education to the student themselves. In the past, this was quite difficult to realize. However, with AI technology, with digital textbooks or AI tutors, we could tailor the education to each individual students. And with the Yoon administration pursuing this digitalization even more, we believe that this would be expedited, so that the classrooms could be vibrant once again. And another portion would be the tailoring to the household, as Mr. President mentioned, from nursery to primary school to high schools. There are many aspects where the government could support and should support. And for nursery care, from next year onwards, there are things that are changing, and from primary school, AI and coding courses are also introduced from next year. And the third point would be tailoring to the region. No matter where you're living in, you have to have a good quality education, especially in terms of university, as aforementioned by other panelists. These regional universities, they should be the hub for the regional innovation. So to for this to be realized, the central government will empower the local governments
이번에 국회에서 많이 노력해 주신 고등평생
and
지원 특별회계도 신설이 되면
lifetime benefit support that was passed by the National Assembly would also take effect next year. And also the fourth point would be tailoring to the society as well as the industry.
이런 이제 교육 맞춤형 교육 계획을 통해
such tailored education plan would be able to realize in 5 years the creativity and the innovation of the country. So we are going to wake up the classrooms that are dozing, and we are trying to make a place where it is a good place to rear children. So for the next 5 years, we are going to exert our fullest effort so that the education system could be changed. So, of course, this is a difficult task, but through the education reform, I hope that we see more good talents in the country and have good and happy children.
So there are a lot of people who are concerned about the pensions, whether they will be able to receive pensions after their age. Does anyone have any questions regarding the pensions? We will give the mic to the young man wearing a beige sweater.
안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. I have a question. I'm very interested in regarding the national pension. I'm in my early 30s. As we have mentioned, there are a lot of issues concerning the bankruptcy of the pension system, and a lot of the young people are concerned whether they will be able to receive the pensions. So a lot of the people are making opinions, and many people think that they would rather not make payments for the national pension and just save money by themselves. So in order to make payments to the pension system, I think that we need an explainable and plausible reason for why we need to pay the pension. So we would like to know whether the government really has the will to change and make amendments to the pension. I think that the younger you are, the more we're concerned and worried about the pension system. We would like to ask the question to make some comments. So the pension reform is ultimately for the future generations, so that they will be able to receive pensions after working and working harder, to give the incentive to work harder. And this is also related to the sustainability of Korea as well. And I think that this is completely different from the reforming of the labor and the education. And with respect to reforming the education and the labor, it is about making new policies on a sustainable manner. However, the pension system needs to be reviewed and studied a long period of time. When it is decided, it goes on it's sustained and maintained for 30, maybe 50 years, and therefore it's very different from the labor and education pension. Although that these reforms should be done cautiously, the pension system needs more attention and more discretion when carrying it out. So we need in-depth study and announcement of the pension system. In the past governments, whenever they mentioned about the pension system, it leads to dropping of votes. So it became a taboo for the government to mention about the pension system, and therefore the people started to stop mentioning the pension system. And the past government has just mentioned a little bit about the pension system for the public officials. However, this government this government is more focused on reforming the pension system, so that we will make a complete version of the reformed pension system. So we will carry out a systemized study and publicization of the reform of the pension. So we will make sure that we will be able to have a completed version of the reformed pension system at the end of this administration's term or the starting of the next administration. So I think that we need to begin and jump jumpstart the process. I think that this is a very historic responsibility in calling for this administration. I will make sure, and would the Minister of Welfare have something else to add? So due to intensifying aging and the low birth rate, the pension system crisis becoming more severe. According to the statistics, and the pension will be depleted soon in 50 years, and therefore the depletion will be become even faster. So the amount of pension that the citizens pay is just about half of what the OECD countries pay. If the insurance payment increases, it intensifies the burdens of the young people. The amount of pension that people receive is less than about 600,000 Korean won, and therefore people criticize that this is just an allowance. And the ratio of elderly poverty in Korea is one of the worst in the OECD countries. We need to reform the pension. We need to improve the sustainability of the finance of the pension system, and we need to strengthen the guaranteeing of income for the elderly and to secure equality between generations. And therefore, we need to come up with a social agreement based on collecting opinions and close analysis. We will cooperate together with the government, the related institutions, and the citizens. We will make sure that we will no longer make a unilateral decision and have the citizen follow it. We will listen closely to the opinions of the experts and communicate actively with the citizens, and we come up with a reform for the citizens with the citizens. Reforming the pension system has already been initiated. Since last August, we have been receiving the opinions of the people through various ways, and we have also started estimating the budget of the pension system, and we will announce the long-term financial budget estimate in March next year and operate the special committee for pension reform and we will cooperate with this committee and to come up with a social consensus. In order for a successful pension reform, we will make sure to make our utmost efforts. We had the Minister of Welfare explain the roadmap for reforming the pension. The three major reforms is bound to receive a lot of discussions and controversies. We will have Mr. Ju Ho-young, floor leader of the People's Party, make some comments. I'm also the head of the floor leader of the People Power Party as well as the Pension Committee as well. The pension reform, labor system and pension system is very difficult to reform. A lot of people think that the people who are opposing the pension system is that they feel the disadvantage directly, and therefore there's a lot of controversies. Even if we have the more seats, however, we need the approval of the citizens to approve this. So this is a golden time for us to make the reform for these three sectors. If the Democratic Party pushes this forward, we are very enthusiastic to accept their offer. However, if the opposition party does not agree with us and assist us, it is difficult for us to carry this forward. For the pension system reform, we did approve some approval from the opposition party. However, with regards to the labor reform and the pension reform, for the labor reform, we are having some difficulty in pushing forward the reform because it's very difficult for us to persuade it. So the opposition party is very close to the labor unions, and they are not supporting the ruling party. And with the education reform, there are a lot of different ideologies regarding this, and the Democratic Party is not supporting the ruling party. And because the opposition party has a majority seats and has close relations with the labor sector and the education sector, it's very difficult for us to push forward the reform process. And this is very important. And at this situation, what we need is the approval of the citizens. If the citizens are able to put pressure to the government and the opposition party, I think that this will help us to push forward the reforms that we are trying to do. I think that it's very important for us to emphasize the urgency and the benefits that the citizens can receive as a result of reforming these sectors. With the power of the public opinion, it will make the reform of these sectors possible. Therefore, I do think that it is very important for us to provide as many discussions like this to the people as much as possible. So we have to persuade people that reforming these systems is necessary for a majority of the citizens to receive the benefits as much as possible and not limited to a certain class. I will make sure that the reform is carried out in the pension system. People who want to make the reform are very patriotic people. They know that this is very difficult to do. However, they are pushing this forward regardless of the opposition they may have. The president, when he mentioned that he will make the reform of these three sectors, I came to realize he really cares about the country. So the National Assembly will also cooperate as much as possible to push this reform forward.
Thank you very much.
Right, that is the Union Administration's first state policy review meeting, which is being carried live even as we speak, with a Q&A session involving 100 civil panelists and members of the cabinet. Now, for a few words on today's live talk, I have Professor Shin Sang-hyuk from Kyung University here with me in the studio. Professor Shin, welcome.
My pleasure.
Right, first then, Professor Shin, what are your thoughts on the Union Administration's management of economic affairs over the past 7 months?
Well, I think it's too early to evaluate Mr. President Yoon's administration's policy yet. But I think what is certain at the moment is that President Yoon and his administration is trying to change economic policies, which implemented by the previous government. First of all, he tried to, change the nuclear power policy. As you know very well, the previous president, Moon Jae-in, his administration implemented the nuclear power reactor, the phasing out policy. But Mr. President Yoon stopped that policy, and actually he emphasized that the nuclear industry could be the engines for the future economy, the economic growth, because they will be one of the main exporting industry to the global market. And on the top of that, the President Yoon seems to take very pro-business the economic policies. I think that is still going on. A negotiation with opposition parties. But I think that will be a kind of some stepping stone for the more active the business activities, which will be very important for the continuous economic growth in Korea.
Right, of course. And Professor Shin, at today's State Policy Review meeting, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho spoke about the government placing priority on taming inflation in the months ahead, of course. What are your prospects with regard to Korea's price pressures in the new year?
I think it will continue for a while, at least one more year. Considering the CPI, Consumer Price Index in USA, very recently, the November, it recorded the 7.1%. So everybody said, right now the prices could be under the control in the United States. That will be very important because the inflation rate in the United States will affect directly the basic interest rate of the USA, foreign reserves, which is a central bank Bank of USA. And then the basic interest rate of the USA will also directly affect the basic interest rate in Korea, because we have to maintain the as possible narrow gap in the basic interest rate with the United States. That will be very important. Otherwise, that we will face the economic crisis, because the U.S. dollars will leave from Korean market, and the USA value, the USA dollar will be more stronger than against Korean currency won. There will be, the good and the bad aspects, but anyway, it's not good for the Korean economic stabilization of the Korean economy. So I think considering these kind of things, Korean the inflation, prices is expected to, I can forecast it will increase for a while. And then Korean government maybe could control to some degree by the changing the basic interest rates.
Right. And ahead of today's State Policy Review meeting, Professor Shin, the government talked about the importance of expanding employment next year. Now, findings show a growing number of potential college graduates are actually delaying their departure from campus because of the tough labor market. And that being said, then, speaking within your capacity as a professor at campus, what do you suppose would be one way of dealing with this dilemma?
I think that this is very, very difficult problem. I think it's not easy to fix this problem. According to the plan suggested by the Yoon administration, they said, I think I cannot find big differences, their strategies from the previous, the strategies implemented by the previous president and previous administrations. But I do want to empathize the one point, actually, from the reasons why the previous, the government policies, unsuccessful results, they should get the lessons. That means that they should strengthen the relations with the private sector, based on the very close and the cooperations with the private sector. I think the government should have to develop the policies or strategies, whatever, to fix this problem. I think that will be the first step. And then maybe through those kind of efforts, the Yoon administration could improve the efficiency in the policy solving the unemployment problems, youth unemployment problems facing the Korean economy.
Right, which of course is very difficult. Professor Shin, the Yoon administration has also highlighted the importance of tangible strategies for balanced regional development. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the direction of the regional development policy, introduced by the Yoon administration is quite good. But as you know very well, during the Nomuyon administration, they adopted the reallocation of the public institute and the government offices. That was the policy about the regional development, the plan. And then when President Lee Myung-bak was when Mr. Lee Myung-bak was the president of the Republic of Korea, he adopted so-called the 5+2, the regional development policy. And Park Geun-hye, actually creative economy, that was the name of the regional development policy during the Park Geun-hye administration. But the policy direction of the Yoon administration is different from the previous the regional development plan. Let me explain more details about it. For example, President Lee Myung-bak, I said that the 5+2 regional development plan. According to this plan, they emphasize the competitiveness of each regions. I think strong competitiveness of region is vital to the national competitiveness. So they put more priorities on the strengthening the competitiveness of each regions, not the balanced regional development. But unlike the Lee Myung-bak government's 5+2 regional development policy, as I said before, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration adopted so-called decentralized governing system, means that transfer more authority to municipal or local government. So the head of the municipal or metropolitan government will have more power, but at the same time, Yoon administration emphasized the responsibility for the policy. So the decentralized system has been the core, the characteristics of the Yoon administration's regional development policy. So this is the, I think, as I said before, the direction. I mean, the direction of this policy seems to be okay, but we have to wait what kind of the result they will be able to make.
Right, and see what happens there. One final question, Professor Shin. Many entities have forecast that Korea's economic expansion next year will hover on the 1% range.
Right.
That being said, what effort do you recommend to ensure that that predicted economic growth rate does not fall any further?
Unlike the economic, the growth rates forecasted by many government think tanks and the research institutes, it is right now forecasted at roughly 1%, something like that. To maintain, to at least to achieve this economic growth rate, I think the government should focus on the promotion of exports. Considering economic structure of the Republic of Korea, that means we have the economic structure heavily rely on external trade. Considering the global, the economic circumstances, it's not less favorable for the Korean economy, and because of COVID-19, global supply chain was destroyed, and then the invasion of Russia's invasion to Ukraine resulted in a very high increase of the energy prices. But particularly, this is very important for the Korean economy because we do not have the natural energies we have, so we have to import many energies from all over the world, and if the prices goes up, that means there can be a very negative impact on South Korea. So I think considering all of this, despite of this kind of the facing difficulties, I think a few remaining alternatives, or more strictly speaking, we have only one maybe a way to overcome this kind of economic crisis, that is exports. So the government should have to slow down the Korean export industry, such as the semiconductors and also the batteries, and then vehicle in the exports of the vehicles and ship, we have achieved some increase in our export volume. So anyway, in every aspect, the Korean government should have focusing on increase the exports.
Which is why the government talked about making us the 5th largest exporter in the world in the near future. I see. All right, Professor Shin, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
My pleasure.
Right, well, on that note, we end this edition of Arirang News Special, which covered live the government's first state policy review on economic matters and efforts. Thank you for watching.